Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another installment of the Kekkei Genkai guide. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about every single Rinnegan jutsu ever. And for the purposes of this video, since a lot of you guys already know the basic 6 Rinnegan jutsu that we saw the 6 Paths of Pain use, I'll save those for the very end of the video. But I want to go ahead and clear something up. So a lot of people feel like when it comes to the Rinnegan, that when it comes to all those jutsu, that it's really limited to the basic 6 jutsu and then the jutsu that Madara and Sasuke are able to use, and that's absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. In all actuality, there are actually more Rinnegan jutsu than there are jutsu for the Tenseigan or the Ketsurugan or the Sharingan, Byakugan. This Kekkei Genkai, hands down, I would wager has more specific jutsu than any other dojutsu that's out there. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and look at every Rinnegan jutsu, and in order to make you guys understand just how, but I want you guys to look at what Masashi Kishimoto wrote in Naruto Databook 3. So in Naruto Databook 3, the way that the Rinnegan was described, it said that it is the greatest of all 3 dojutsu, and that during times of disorder, the heavens themselves send down somebody who has the Rinnegan, and that person's either going to be a god of creation or they're going to be a god of destruction. If they're a god of creation, then they're going to calm down the world that is in utter chaos. But if they're a god of destruction, everything around them is going to be reduced to ashes. So that's very high praise, but when you look at all these jutsu, you start to see why it's actually deserved. So jumping right in, I want to go ahead and start with the 6 Crimson Ray formation, which is a barrier jutsu. Now, in order to use this jutsu, it does require you to actually have 6 pass power, but essentially when you use this jutsu, nobody can step past it, and those who are trapped inside of it, it's almost impossible for them to be able to escape it. So the only person we've seen actually use this jutsu is Obito Uchiha, and in order for him to use this jutsu, he has to make use out of the truth seeking orbs that he has, and essentially Obito has the truth seeking orb suddenly get engulfed in a flame of red chakra, which then launches all these chakra rods from Obito's body, and each of these rods is surrounded by all of that same chakra. These rods all hit the ground in 6 different points around him, and once Obito performs the hand seals that are required, the rods themselves, because they're cloaked in Obito's 6 pass chakra, are able to be used in order to create this barrier. Now, the thing about this barrier which makes it absolutely busted is the fact that even a tailed beast bomb can do nothing against the sheer power of this barrier, and in some cases it can actually send those Biju bombs into the sky. So when it comes to this jutsu, there's only really one way for you to be able to escape it, which is you have to have some type of a space-time ninjutsu in order to get out of it. Now, the only person we've seen actually effectively get out of this jutsu are the users that can use the Flying Thunder God. But with that being said, there is a huge advantage to this jutsu. Essentially, once those rods are placed into the ground, much like how the Flying Thunder God seal never goes away, that chakra never actually leaves those rods that are placed at various points in the ground, so the user can deactivate or they can reactivate that barrier anytime that they feel the need to. Now, I will say this much: when it comes to whether or not you're an anime fan or whether or not you are a manga fan, there are some key differences between the 2 continuities that you need to be made aware of. So in the manga, once you use this jutsu, because you're using a truth seeking orb, the truth seeking orb is sacrificed. It does not come back. Whereas in the anime, once this jutsu is deactivated, the truth seeking orb returns. Now, the next jutsu I want to go over is going to be the Reign of the High Emperor jutsu, which is a key signature jutsu that Momoshiki has, and we actually saw this in the Boruto movie before we saw it in any other continuity. So essentially what this jutsu does is it allows Momoshiki to absorb all of the jutsu that are fired off at him, and once this happens, Momoshiki is able to take all this chakra and all the elements into a giant ball of chakra, and when Momoshiki fires it back, he fires the jutsu back out of his right hand, and the amount of destructive capability this jutsu has is likely 2 times fold, given the fact that when Momoshiki shoots jutsu back, most of the time it's twice as powerful as what was shot at him originally. Now, up next we have a jutsu that a lot of people are familiar with, which is going to be Madras Limbo, and in particular we're going to be talking about the Willgrave Border Jail jutsu. So when Madara uses this jutsu, he's able to project shadows of himself into an invisible world that coexists with the physical world, and this gives him a huge advantage because unless you have the Rinnegan or unless you have the ability to use 6 pass chakra, you're not actually able to get an idea of where these clones are. And for a jutsu like this that is so overpowered, there is a chakra cost that is required. However, there's also some drawbacks to being able to use this jutsu. So essentially, if you only have one Rinnegan, you can only create one shadow to put into that invisible world. Now, actually getting a 4 times increase, and you can create up to 4 clones that can be placed inside of that shadow world. Now, each put the clones in the shadow world and when he has to cool down. Now, the 6-pass Coffin seal is a jutsu that I think all you guys are familiar with, but essentially this jutsu is used by someone who has the Rinnegan, and it allows them to become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. However, when this happens, they need to be in direct close proximity of the Ten Tails, and they need to form the accurate hand seals in order to make this happen. But once this takes place, it allows them to become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. Now, when you start getting into the Heaven Concealed Jutsu, this is another Rinnegan jutsu that Madara Uchiha is able to use. Now, in order to use this jutsu, Madara has to use a combination of his own hand seals as well as hand seals that are used with the Susanoo. So when Madara does this, he's actually able to pull down giant meteorites from the atmosphere, and he's able to pinpoint a specific place that he wants these meteorites to hit. And so once this happens, the meteorites are actually falling in succession. And so when these meteorites get stopped, Madara can essentially have another meteorite summoned and stacked on top of it. So the destructive capability of this is that it completely wiped out a huge portion of the 4th Division in the war, and the shockwave from this attack was able to travel so far that despite the fact that the 4th Great Ninja War was taking place in an entirely different country, it was able to travel all the way to the hidden Cloud Village where the Shinobi HQ was located at. Now, jumping into another jutsu that is one of my favorites, this is actually a jutsu that's given to us in the Boruto era. So this is going to be the Temporal Rewind jutsu. So this jutsu is essentially the jutsu that Urashiki is able to use when he uses the Rinnegan and turns his Rinnegan blue. So once he focuses his chakra in his eyes, his Rinnegan changes colors, it becomes blue, and so Urashiki is able to travel several seconds back into the past. And so once this happens, Urashiki is given the opportunity to go back in the past a few seconds without the people around him realizing what happened, and so Urashiki is able to perfectly counter any type of attacks. However, there are 2 main drawbacks to this jutsu. Number 1, it consumes a considerable amount of chakra, like a lot of the Rinnegan jutsu. And then number 2, the other drawback to it is that Urashiki's body is going to be vulnerable to any type of traps that are sprung around him. It makes you wonder, what could Madara do if Madara had this jutsu? Now, this next attack is arguably one of the most famous Rinnegan jutsu that we have, which is going to be Indra's Arrow. Now, when it comes to Sasuke, Sasuke needs quite a bit of prep work in order to use this jutsu. He has to use his perfect Susanoo as basically being his own version of the Gido Mazu statue in order to draw on chakra from all 9 Biju, and then he has to infuse his own lightning style chakra into the attack, which, as a side note, even Kurama said that the level of skill that is required to use this jutsu is something that puts Sasuke on the level of the Sage's 6th pass. I think a lot of people sleep on that line, but the overwhelming power of this attack was powerful enough that it was able to counter Naruto's 6th pass giant Rasen Shuriken that was using 6th pass chakra as well as Biju chakra in order to counter this attack. And when that happened, it created a giant vortex that from the actual sky, the upper atmosphere, all the way down to the near ground, and the shockwave of the attack could be felt several countries over. Now, another jutsu is the Origami Replacement Jutsu. So essentially, this is another brand new Rinnegan jutsu that is specific to Urashiki himself, but it's also one, if in the right hands, is actually going to be a pretty dangerous jutsu. So when Urashiki uses this jutsu, it allows his body to disappear without warning, and when Urashiki uses this jutsu, it allows him to essentially wipe away all of his chakra, making it impossible for anybody to track him. Now, from here on, I'm going to start going over some of the jutsu that a lot of you guys are already familiar with. So most famously, we have the 6th pass jutsu, which are going to be the basic 6th pass jutsu that anybody who has the Rinnegan is able to use. And the fact of the matter is that when it comes to 6th pass jutsu, as a side note, when you add in the outer path, it's actually 7 basic Rinnegan jutsu. So you have the Deva path, which is able to manipulate and attract and repel forces. You have the human path, which gives you the ability to read a person's mind and also remove their soul. You also have the Ashura path that allows the person to turn their body into an actual weapon or into armor. You also have the animal path that allows you to summon multiple animals all at once. You have the Naraka path, which allows the person to call on the King of Hell in order to interrogate people and essentially kill them if they tell you a lie. And you also have the Praetor path that's able to absorb any type of chakra. Now, the downside to the Praetor path is that somebody is using Ninjutsu. If you absorb too much sage chakra, then your body is obviously going to be overloaded. And you have the outer path, which is essentially what a lot of fans refer to as being the Rin Rebirth jutsu. And I want to start there because when it comes to the outer path, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that jutsu. Now, a lot of people think that this jutsu is one that requires a lot of chakra to be able to perform, and you can survive this jutsu if you have enough chakra to use it, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. I know what Conan said back during the Pain arc, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people are missing the fact that Conan was actually wrong. Essentially, in the war arc, it was retcon, and instead of saying you have to have a certain amount of chakra to be able to survive this jutsu, in the war arc, you have Obito flat out telling Madara that in order for Madara to be brought back to life, it will require Obito throwing his own life away. Several times in the war arc, the usage of the outer path, better known again as Rin Rebirth, is referred to as being a life for a life jutsu. And in Naruto Data Book 4, which is written by Naruto series creator Masashi Kishimoto, the usage of the Rin Rebirth is classified as being a death sentence for the user, simply for the fact this jutsu is actually projecting the soul of the person into the underworld in order to bring people back from the dead. Now, the trade-off for this is that it requires the life of the user. The only reason why someone like Obito was able to survive, it was directly stated to us in the manga that if Zetsu was not attached to Obito, Obito himself actually would have died. And the moment that Zetsu detached from Obito, Obito's body was in the process of dying. And if you take Obito's own words into account, Obito himself says that he was dead before Naruto briefly brought him back to life. But even then, after Naruto does so, Naruto looks at Obito and says, "I'm sorry, but I couldn't." And Obito flat out says, "I know." There's a pause between the two, and while it's never directly stating, the implication is there. Obito's time was short, and again, it's because of the retcon that was made that using the Rin Rebirth comes at the expense of the user's life. Now, another ability of the 6 Paths of Pain jutsu is the ability to actually control the dead bodies of 6 different people by using the chakra rods that the Rinnegan is able to create. And by using those chakra rods as receivers, it allows you to manipulate the bodies, and each of these bodies can use one specific Rinnegan jutsu. Now, probably one of the most badass Rinnegan jutsu that we have out there is going to be the summoning of the Gidomazu statue. So once this jutsu is used, hands down, anybody who's caught in the path of this jutsu is pretty much fucked. And the reason why you're in so much trouble when somebody uses this jutsu against you is that, used to its full capability, the Gidomazu statue is actually able to drain chakra from anybody that it touches. And when we first see it used in the flashback, when Nagato used this jutsu, it killed anybody it came into contact with immediately. Now, the trade-off to this jutsu is the fact that it isn't like the normal summoning jutsu, and it makes a lot of sense given the fact that it's so overpowered. Unlike a normal summoning jutsu where you have to offer up a little bit of blood in order to summon it, in order to get this jutsu, you have to offer up some of your own life force in order to summon the Gidomazu statue. Though I will say this much, the trade-off for the life force, it might be argued that this only is something that applies to Nagato, because we did see Madara use the jutsu and we saw Obito use it. Now, maybe you can argue it's because both of them had Hashirama cells and that kind of threw off the side effects, but the fact of the matter is we didn't see those side effects with the summoning of the Gidomazu statue when Obito and Madara used it. Now, up next you have the Meino Teijikara, which is Sasuke's unique Rinnegan jutsu that allows Sasuke to control anything that is inside of a 10-meter radius, that allows him to swap himself and other people, or himself and other objects, or swap other objects and people without them even realizing what happened. And Sasuke can also swap out ninjutsu that's being fired or used in that radius, which is really overpowered, but again, it's limited to only 10 meters in distance. And for a more detailed breakdown of this jutsu, I have a whole video breaking it down. I highly recommend checking that one out. Now, when it comes to the outer path chains, these are chains that Obito flat out says are more powerful than the chakra chains that Nagato was able to use with his power. And these chains are embedded with a curse seal that suppresses the chakra of anybody that is being caught inside of them. These chains are potent enough that they can actually keep the tailed beast held in check, where they can't actually use their power. Now, lastly, we have Sasuke's unnamed Rinnegan jutsu that allows Sasuke to travel between the different dimensions that are controlled by the Otsutsuki clan. So essentially, this creates a giant dark spear that spirals around Sasuke that allows Sasuke and other people to enter into it. However, this requires a considerable amount of chakra for Sasuke to use, and when Sasuke transports himself or the number of people that he enters into the portal, it absolutely absolutely drains Sasuke of even more chakra the more people he has to transport. Just transporting himself takes a lot of chakra out of Sasuke, which is why during the Kinshiki battle, Sasuke was absolutely being demolished. Just why during the Momoshiki battle, again, Sasuke wasn't able to pull out his full power. And when you look at Naruto Gaiden, the same thing happened here. After prolonged usage of this jutsu, Sasuke was not able to use his ocular powers. He was only able to use his Sharingan, nothing more or less, for roughly 8 chapters before he got his ocular powers back. And that's gonna be it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think about the powers of the Rinnegan, and in particular, let me know which one is your favorite, and let me know if you guys think the description in Naruto Databook 3 is accurate, that the users of the Rinnegan can either be seen as a god of creation or a god of destruction. Let me know what you guys think. But so always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.